Hey, what's going on? This is Edwin Vereen from WOBL, WDLW Sports, I-90 Sports, and the Sports Bros Podcast. And you're listening to Tapped In with Tony.
Welcome to Tapped In with Tony. I am your host, Tony Bogan. Tonight, joining me is one is an up and coming content creator in Northeast Ohio. He's covered the Akron Zips, the Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Guardians. Nolan Pascu joins us. Nolan, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited. Let's do it.
Hell yeah, absolutely, man. I'm seeing that you've been growing quite a bit in the content realm there, and you're only 20 years old?
Yep. Just turned 20. Dang, it's already been like 3 weeks, but yeah, 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So super excited. Yeah.
Nice. And before we go into that, tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from initially?
Yeah. So I grew up in Akron, Ohio, and played a bunch of sports growing up. And basically, always my dream was to play in the NFL forever. I'm a 5'10" guy that's built like 150, 160. So that went out the window pretty early, honestly. But yeah, I still wanted to work in sports some way, and I didn't know like what my pathway was for a long time. And then during COVID, I picked up a camera and just started taking pictures of literally whatever because nothing was going on in the world. So I just drive around and take pictures of random stuff. Ended up falling in love with it. Started shooting high school sports. Just went to every single event I could. Um, just hustled for like 2-3 years, and then took a student job at the University of Akron. And yeah, that kind of led to a bunch of different opportunities. Got to meet some really cool people, work on some really cool projects. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And where did you end up going to high school? And prior to COVID, what sports did you play coming up?
Yeah, so I played through like elementary and middle school. I played like all the sports, went through everything. And then I went to high school at Lake High School. It's in Hartville, Ohio. So we moved out there. Totally forget what year, but it's been like 8-9 years ago. But we moved out to Lake, and then through high school, I played lacrosse, played football for a couple years, lacrosse, and then I was planning actually on playing lacrosse in college, but then I took a student photo job, and kind of picked career over sports just because lacrosse, yeah, you can play in college, but it's not really going to go anywhere past that. So,
Gotcha. And how was it like growing up in Hartville, like, as compared to Akron? I know I've driven through
it was a
Hartville.
really funny switch up actually, because I don't know if you've ever been down here, but dude, it's a bunch of farms. We got a big hardware store, and that's pretty much all that's in Hartville. I worked there for a couple of years, honestly, because there's nowhere else to work. But yeah, it was a huge adjustment because Akron, it's not the safest place. I'm never going to talk bad about it because I love where I'm from, but it's just not the safest place. And so moving out to Lake, it took away a lot of stresses as far as, I could kind of go wherever I wanted because everywhere around our house was just farms. So yeah, I had a really like free range childhood, if you want to call it that, playing in the woods all the time. So it was a blast.
Nice. And I see a little bit contrasted with me. I'm in Ravenna. I grew up in
Mhm.
Cleveland, and I'm not going to talk bad about Cleveland myself, but Cleveland isn't the safest area
Right.
we've seen throughout the news. So with Ravenna, it's just there's like farmland too. Like I've driven through Canton, through there on my way to Canton to cover games, and it's like you go from 55 down to 25, and then to 55.
Right.
There's like one or two ice cream places up there I
Mhm.
gotta check out, and I'm going to be checking out Lake Center Christian game in the near future, and I've
Okay.
covered a game at Lake before.
You said you haven't covered a game at Lake?
I've covered a game at Lake. It was between them and Jackson a couple years ago,
Gotcha.
and Lake Center Christian. I believe within the next couple days I'll be covering them. They
Gotcha.
play there. They're a little small school out in that area.
Yeah.
And, speaking of which, when you were covering games, like, did you Did you take photos for all the sports? Like, take as much photos as you could?
Yeah, I mean, for the last couple years of high school, the only sport I was playing was lacrosse. So it was, all the fall sports, all the winter sports I was at, just trying to figure out what I liked to shoot, what could kind of turn into a future for me. And it took a long time to even realize that that's a future that you can, excuse me, a future that you can have. Like, it just doesn't click for a lot of people that there's other avenues to work in sports, other than just playing and coaching. I mean, you can be an accountant and work in sports. You can do literally whatever you want.
Oh,
So it took forever to realize that. And then once it clicked, then I was pretty heavy set, like, this is what I want to do. So all the choices I made after I kind of realized that was all based around building a career, kind of in the social media sports realm. And since then, it's kind of grown from that. After I realized that there's a real lack of money in sports social right now, and that's definitely something that could change. But there's definitely a real lack of money or willingness to invest from a lot of programs and organizations. So I kind of branched out into like the commercial space, different content creation like YouTube, stuff like that. Just kind of exploring all the different avenues that there are right now. So it's a really exciting time because everything's changing right now. So
absolutely. I think ever since COVID, like everything just changed. Like that's how I started like doing the video, taking the video stuff more seriously, believe it or not, during COVID.
yeah,
Started
no, I
doing
mean
video.
there's so many more people now. I mean, you go to any high school game, there's you know 5, 6 kids on the sidelines shooting, whether it's video or photo, on their little Nikon's D7500 or whatever they are, like whatever they can get their hands on. And it's awesome to see because for me, at least, like a couple years ago, that was me. So it's really awesome to see that because like whenever I was doing it, I was the only kid on the sidelines.
Mhm.
And that was 4 years ago. So it's crazy how fast it's changed.
Wow. And when I was in high school, I probably wasn't even thinking about something like that. I was probably busy just writing, putting stats in for the scorebook because I did baseball,
Yeah.
football for high school. I wasn't on the sidelines regularly until the year before COVID, where I took a camera. It was some knockoff crap from Amazon. Went down to the sideline, started shooting video. Actually got a video of a AJ Barner, Michigan guy,
Mhm.
probably a future NFL player, recovering a fumble and scoring when I was supposed to be doing some play-by-play stuff. As
That's
when you
funny.
get a camera, you just gotta times it's like working your way down to the sideline.
Right. Yeah. You just got to make it happen no matter what you have to do, really. I mean, if you do everything by the book, I feel like it's going to be really hard to get anywhere, at least quickly. So,
Absolutely, and you definitely gotta think outside the box because starting off, obviously, high school football is really big in this area.
right.
See myself do college football, girls lacrosse, college basketball. Because I know I've seen your stuff with college basketball.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we're working on right now. They're honestly probably our biggest client is the University of Akron. So we do all of their content and it's an absolute blast. I did my student videography there last year. Um, and a real quick side note really is like whenever I was there, I put in I think we were allotted 20 or 25 hours a week, and I was working probably 50 or 60, um, and I could only clock in for those 20, but I basically just went in and I said, "Akron, they don't have." It's changing this year, but whenever I was a student there, they didn't really have a creative staff at all. It was me and one other student were the entire athletic creative department. So, we basically just worked, it was $10 an hour, but it was practically for free because we were using our own gear, and we couldn't even clock in for all the time we were working. Um, and that's obviously nothing against anyone at Akron. That's just how their internship program works. And what they needed from us was just more than they realized, I believe. So after I left there, though, they I had no intention on going back and putting them on my freelance contract, nothing like that. They came back to me and they said, "Hey, we really miss like what you've done for us, and we really see like how big of an impact you had. Like, what's your freelance rate? So I was able to go back and get myself a fair rate, which is a real rarity in college sports. Either because every school has a built out creative department, or they just don't have the budget for one at all, which is what you see with a lot of like D2 and D3 schools. There's a ton like in our area, but really nationwide is they either already have a staff or they don't have the budget for one, so it's not happening soon.
Oh, yeah.
So
Especially in your case at a D1 program.
right, that was a real unique
Yeah.
unique thing in 2023, I think. So yeah.
And you guys, when you started doing that, were as far as did you shoot all the sports at Akron like you did at high school?
Yeah, so, while I was a student there, the whole fall I was just with football. I would be at 3 or 4 of their practices per week, and then we traveled them on the road, which was an absolute blast. If I don't know what your career path, what you're planning on doing, but if you ever get the opportunity to travel with a team, take it, dude, like, such a blast. Um, Especially as a student because none of us really it was like the student GAs for the football team and then like the student creative team. We didn't really have any professional standards that we had to uphold. So it was like, just a party every weekend with our friends, traveling to a random city. So it was an absolute blast to do that. But yeah, then once we got into the winter and the spring, we worked with every sport. So it was a
I
blast.
gotcha. Remember covering a game in Mount Union this past and at John Carroll for football. It's just I've heard about Mount Union all the time because
Yeah.
growing up, you usually don't. Usually, you're thinking D1, D1, D1. You don't really care about any
Right.
D2.
You don't realize how many opportunities there are everywhere else.
Absolutely, and especially just it's a blessing getting to go to Walsh, go to Mount Union, Tri C. When I came up and did play-by-play stuff for Tri C, that was when they had their creative department. They suspended it, but I believe they brought it back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can't sleep on it. You cannot sleep
No.
on it, no matter what level it is.
Yeah, so one of my, I don't know, I always go back and forth whether I call them employers or contractors because they're really technically contractors. But one of the guys that works for me a lot, his name's Wilbur. I don't know if you know him, but he does lacrosse coverage for a ton of high school teams, a ton of D2 and 3 lacrosse in the area. He absolutely kills it. And he's just a great dude, but excuse me. He has yeah, he's really made an entire career out of covering those D2 and D3 sports, and he's got himself a lot of job opportunities. Covering that lacrosse at the D2 and D3 level, it got him as the director of student video at Kent State football. And then after he left there, now he's on creative staff with my agency. So it's really invaluable, what you can pick up between skills, connections, and portfolio at those lower levels. It's really invaluable.
Absolutely, and the people you meet around the way. I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Nuneke, Third Coast Hoops.
Yeah.
He basically, in a way, he started all of this, like, and then a lot of people fall suit. You have your Matt Gould of Cleveland.com. You got people like, not to toot my own horn. I don't like to toot my own
Right.
horn myself.
No, do it, dude. I mean,
Non-sports.
yeah, I see you every time you interview players for football is what I see most of you at. Those interviews, I mean, nobody else is doing that. You don't see that at the high school level very often, if at all. So
Yeah,
it's really awesome to whether it's, for the media or for the players, it's really awesome that you can do that. Because whenever the media wants to talk to you, whenever you're a young kid, like it's a really cool feeling. So
oh,
that's
absolutely.
awesome what you're doing.
It's like a mix of like being a reporter and doing video. It's like, why
Right.
not both? I
Yeah, that's
started
an
off.
awesome niche, dude.
So, I believe you dropped out of college to start your own creative department. What led you to do that and take a leap of faith?
Um, it had a ton to do with my faith, a whole lot less to do with my ability, um, and also a lot to do with just the people around me. Um, Yeah, it was around April of last year I made the decision to drop out, and I was at a spot where I took a part-time job with the MLB as a content creator, and one of the first home series they had lined up exactly with all of my, final exams for my classes for my spring semester, and so I went to my professor and I was like, "Hey, I just got this really cool job, I gotta be there at this time, and your exam is after that. Is there any way we can push it like earlier in the day, the next day, whatever?" And, none of them were willing to work with me. And that was after I was taking on I was needing to say no to retainer clients or just like random, side jobs, whatever. I had to say no to them because I had too much classwork. And then that exam situation was really kind of the last straw. And I was like, if I'm in college to get a career and to build those connections, why are they preventing me from building those connections and getting those jobs,
Yeah.
if it's already there for me?
Yeah.
So, had a lot of talks with like the people around me, a lot of time in prayer, and just kind of, decided to take a leap of faith and figuring I'm young enough. If it ends up not working out, then, it doesn't work out and I got to go back. But, at this point, I don't see myself going back. There was a point probably around mid August where I was really regretting it, because the first 3 months after I dropped out, all these people I said no to obviously went to like different people, whatever. And then I was waiting on more work and that work just wasn't coming. So I think from, April until August, I made maybe 2 grand from my business. And I was like, did I really make the right decision? I was okay because I had a couple part-time jobs going on between the MLB and the NFL. But I was like, well, if my end goal is to build this business and it's just not going anywhere, what am I doing? So I was super fortunate. Right around that time was whenever I got contacted by Akron to cover their sports. Um, and that kind of gave me some stability to be able to comfortably reach out like at the price point that I wanted to other clients, and kind of build an awesome client base. So from mid August till now, the growth has been insane. It's been an absolute blessing. Um, and I wouldn't have done anything differently, honestly. So it's been a ride. It's been a really stressful ride. Continues to be a super stressful ride, but that's part of it. And I'm just happy that I get to do like what I love to do.
Amen
So
to that, man. And if you're a creator and you haven't at one point said, "Oh, who am I kidding? I was so delusional to think this could work" at one
right,
point in your life, then you really haven't been putting in the effort, more or
right,
less. Like every person's had that point where they're thinking thinking of giving up or have thought of giving up
a
right
hundred
before they
percent. I
hit
mean,
their
I still get that every couple of weeks. I'm like, dude, I could just go work a 9 to 5, and I wouldn't have as much money, but I'd have so much less stress. So I have that thought all the time still. But you just got to keep choosing yourself and keep choosing your future. So
Mhm. I work a 9 to 5 and I still grind at this.
there you go, man.
Because
Hell yeah,
it's the passion. It's like I can do
100%.
that, go home and do nothing, or I
Right.
can go out, tell somebody's story through a lens, even if I gotta stay up till 12, 1 in the morning and
Yeah.
edit. That's some work that gets done. That's some views that people see. Because you never know. It's not necessarily about the amount of views you get, because people get hung up on that. It's getting the right views that matters.
For sure. 100%.
Because I've covered 3 basketball games in a day. I've covered 4 baseball games in a day. It's just it does get stressful, but at the end of the day, when you look back at your work, like I did it. I
Yeah.
did it. I created that. Even when I didn't feel like doing it, I did it anyway, and I'm glad.
Yeah. And then you keep building that stack of evidence that just, proves to yourself even, it doesn't have you don't have to prove anything to anyone else, but it proves to yourself that you can do what you set out to do. And that's the
Exactly.
greatest fulfillment in life, in my opinion, is just being able to set out and do what you want to do. I don't know how to word that. To set out and then accomplish what you set out to accomplish, really.
Exactly. And they some people will say, "Oh, anyone can hold a camera." Anyone can hold a camera, but it takes a real badass sort of say to go there, you stay up late editing. You got to make sure it looks right. Because you can't just throw something together and say, oh, here, especially in a case where you have clients like
Definitely.
NFL clients like MLB. You got to make it look presentable. You got to make it look like this is why I bought
Right. Yeah, the
this.
unseen hours I feel like are also super overlooked in this industry. Even especially now that I'm billing like freelance clients, they look at the invoice and they're like, "Oh, why are you charging this much for an hour on site?" And it's like, "Well, because I'll be on site for an hour, but I'm driving a half hour each way, spending 3 hours in the edit. I just spent an hour on the phone on a consult. I'm spending 3 hours on a storyboard before I get there, sending another hour and a half, delivering it to you, like all that." They just and then after you explain that to them, 90% of the time they get it, but until you explain it to them, it just goes so overlooked.
Oh yeah, because it's work. Like a lot of people see the finished product, they don't see the time editing.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they don't see the tears, the stress, the
Yeah,
work, the anxiety.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, but let's talk about your MLB work and your NFL work. How'd you
Yeah.
get involved in that?
So it started with the NFL, and that was the end of last August. So I just finished my second season with them. Well, hopefully didn't finish because the Browns can still get a playoff game. But
Probably
um,
maybe Steelers Bills.
I don't. I think they just keep the three in market. So I'll
Mm,
get there though.
okay,
So
get there when you get there.
yeah, so last August they reached out to me via Twitter DM, which I thought was 100% a scam at first. I got this DM saying, actually, let me just pull up the DM
Okay,
because I always like paraphrase it and I never give it straight.
this
Um,
time you're showing receipts.
exactly. Cool. Yeah. So I got a DM. I take that back. It was the end of September. So the season was underway because my first game was week 6, I think.
Mhm.
Um, but I followed someone at the right time, and he's not with the NFL anymore, so I'm not going to say his name. But he reached out and said, "Hey, Nolan, appreciate the follow. We have some opportunities coming up in Cleveland. Do you have a show reel that you can show me? And do you have a time this week like that we can set up a call?" At the time, all I saw in his bio was like at NFL LCC. I'm like, okay, in Cleveland, like what is this? And honestly, I didn't even have a show reel at the time, mostly because I didn't realize how important it was to have one. Um, so I got that DM. I answered. I'm like, hey, would love to, help out wherever I can. Because at that time, like I'm answering this DM in my dorm, working to myself to death at this student job. Like I don't want to be there. So I answered that. We set up the Zoom call. I don't believe it for a second until I see like the Zoom invite come across and it's from at NFL.com. And I'm like, okay, like here we go. Like,
Oh,
um, yeah. So I spent that whole night building myself a resume because like I didn't even have a half professional resume because I worked at a rubber manufacturing plant and a hardware store. Like I didn't have like experience for the NFL. Like I
mm.
so did not deserve that. But God has a crazy way of working, and it just so happened that someone left the Cleveland market in the middle of the season. They really needed someone, and I followed this guy literally on the perfect day because it was the day that they opened applications.
Some guy named Nolan Pascu.
Dude, I was posting all my work on Twitter like from the season, and that's all he saw from me. And really, that's all I had to show for my work was everything I had on my Twitter. So
Wow.
I got through that interview, and I was hired on as an LCC, which is live content correspondent. So they have three of us in each market city. So there's three in Cleveland, three in Pittsburgh, three in Cincy, three in every city. And we cover all of the in-game stuff. We get there before arrivals. So we film like arrivals on cell phones, do some photos for that. And then in-game, we film DSLR video and cell phone video, mostly just for in-game highlights is the majority of what we're used for. So we send stuff off like 3 minutes after the play happens. they get it out on social super quick, and that's how you see, the play you just saw on TV on your phone.
Yeah.
So we do that, and then like some player foundation events, which is always fun. You go hang out and watch someone hand out turkeys, all that. So that's always a blast. But yeah, so that's the NFL, and then the MLB was a referral from the NFL, and that happened around March. It happened really late for both of these, like going into the season. They were both super unexpected. Excuse me, but the MLB was pretty much the same deal, except it's a lot heavier photo responsibility, and you're also the only one in the stadium.
Mm.
So there's a lot of responsibility because a lot of times away teams don't travel their creative staffs on those road trips just because they're playing every single day. So that's where the MLB LCC program kind of steps in, and they essentially deliver for the away teams photo and video content through the game. So that was a really interesting position because even though I was a Guardians fan, all of my work went on every team that they were playing's page. So I was really always like shooting against the Guardians, but it was for a different team every single day. So it was a blast. Yeah, there's a lot. I'm not going back to the MLB next year, just because there's a lot that they do communicationally, as well as their pay system that's just not it's not what anyone that's doing content full time is really looking for, because it's a lot of time that you have to be at the ballpark, and financially, there's just not a lot of incentive. But as a foot in the door position or someone that's still in college looking for that first job in the creative world, it's absolutely perfect because I mean, you get to go meet with the Guardians creative team and every MLB team comes through. So you basically have a chance to interview with every single team in the MLB through the course of a season because, you hop on a phone call with each team, before the series starts. Hey, what are you looking for? La di da di da. And if you're really looking for a job, that's a great place to sell yourself because you have, what is it, 30 opportunities just to talk about what you can do.
Yep.
So it's a great position. It just doesn't fit super well for where I'm at.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like I say, you gotta know your worth. Definitely.
Yep. And it's not even really that. It's more just the positions built around younger creatives that are still looking for their first job.
Mm.
Um, so it's not like they made it to try to take advantage of anyone. It's just the nature of the position.
Yep. Bees what it bees.
It
What's
is
been
what
your
it is.
favorite part about doing the creative work, whether it be through baseball or through the corporate world?
It's 1,000% been the people I meet. 1,000%. I grew up a Cleveland sports fan, so it's just a crazy blessing every time I get to, go build a personal relationship with these players that, 3 years ago I was watching on TV. Like, man, I hope I can work with these guys. And now, they just text me on a random weekday and they're like, hey, let's go shoot something. So it's just an absolute blast. I just love all the people. All the people that work in sports are just great, um, except for the ESPN broadcast guys. But no, I'm playing. Those sideline broadcast cameras always get on my nerves. But no, everybody that works in sports, I mean, we're all, and I know you get this too. I mean, it's such a competitive industry that everybody would just tear each other apart if we didn't have some sort of camaraderie going on.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just love all the people that I get to work with.
Oh yeah. The camaraderie is worth it. Whether you see someone from Spectrum when they cover states, or some content person who just picked up a camera for the first time and they're
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
see
you always have the opportunity to either teach someone something or learn something from someone. And that's
absolutely.
something I feel like you don't get in a lot of places.
Absolutely. And even I'm saying this as someone who's 31. Yes, I just aged myself. As someone who's 31 years old, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm still
Yeah. I
learning. I'm
mean,
always going to learn.
yeah. I work for the MLB and the NFL, and I learn stuff from people that shoot high school all the time. Like,
Oh,
it's I don't know. The level at which you're working usually doesn't matter. There's some guys that you can tell like, oh, they're never gonna shoot, a high school or even college game again just because they're, way up here. I'm talking about like the Drew Fergusons, the Billy Quatches, like
Mhm.
crazy shooters. But yeah, there's always something to be learned.
Gotcha. And I know we're about 10 or so days into 24. What are your plans with Pascal Crib? What are your plans just moving forward? Where do you see this in a few years from now?
Yeah, so this year we're really hoping to get our first full-time employee. That's probably our biggest goal. So what that looks like is probably bringing on one or two more retainer clients, and that'll kind of push us over, what I'll, what I'll be able to afford to pay someone full time. So I've, I'm still pretty fresh in the industry, but I've worked enough positions to where I see that I know what someone's worth, and I don't want to pay someone an amount that feels like they're being taken advantage of just because I've been taken advantage of for my rates and I've seen so many people get taken advantage of for theirs. I'm not going to hire someone and pay them 30, 40 grand a year for a full-time spot and just cycle through people like, you know, every 2 or 3 years. I
Like the
really
Browns
I want to be able
quarterbacks.
to pay what's that?
Like the Browns at quarterbacks.
Exactly, man. No, but I wanna bring someone in that um, wants to help build a brand with me. I don't want to pay someone to stick around for 2 or 3 years. I want someone to be in it for the long run. So that's my biggest goal right now. It's been a lot of work on my shoulders right now, just because I'm overworked for one person right now, but I'm underworked for two. So just trying to get to the next plateau where I can actually hire someone.
Gotcha.
That's our biggest goal. Our next goal, honestly, is to start working with a couple more universities. So we really love what we do with Akron. Akron loves what they do with us. Um, and I really want to extend that relationship to other colleges, um, because there's not a lot of schools that can produce live video to our level, at least without a larger team. So the benefits of us coming in and doing it for them is we basically bring in the equivalent of four salary people to every single game. And they can't afford to put four people on salary, but they can't afford, to pay per game, for each of these things. And realistically, I think if we were to cover every single game for Akron, which we don't, it would come out to about the salary of one creative. And the fact that we're able to have, two or three at every single event, it just provides more value to them than makes sense to hire. So
Absolutely. And especially when you look at the business side, you've got like we're growing too. Like we've got like quite a few people doing video,
yeah.
stuff like that, audio broadcasts. It takes a team. It
Oh, for
takes a team to make the dream work, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And Nolan, thank you for taking the time to come on to Tapped In with Tony. Do you have any advice for anyone, regardless of age, looking to get into the creative realm?
Pick up a camera and start doing it. Just
Oh,
do it.
that's great advice. And you can check out this episode and many more like it on Spotify. You can follow me on Twitter at tboaks2010. I will not refer to it as X. And if you don't want to argue with me, argue with your mama. Instagram created by underscore Tony. And and Nolan. Actually, let me ask you. I'm interviewing you, so where can people follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me, it's at Nolan Pascu. It's just my name, Nolanpascu. And you can also check us out, the more business end at Pascu Creative, just one word, spelled the same way as my last name. So that's where you
Aw-
can find us.
Awesome. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Definitely, man. Thanks for having me.